Okay,
Recording and transcribing.
rocking and rolling.
So, do you want to do a very quick introduction, Julie, or not?
Yes.
Yep.
So we all met a couple of months ago, and I contacted Kevin again to see where he was at in terms of what he was doing, but also to invite him to take part in a reflexive reading activity and to be the first one to do that with us. So I think if we each introduce ourselves and just mention briefly what we're doing, that would be good. So Kevin, if you'd like to start.
Sure. My name is Kevin Howard, and I live in Hood River, Oregon, which is in the Columbia Gorge National Scenic Area, beautiful area. I am a climate risk consultant and working independently. I have my own consulting business, but I'm also an author of a book called On With It Last. And so currently what I'm doing right now is on a virtual book tour, podcasts, radio interviews, trying to make sense of so many things we're grappling with in the world today. You know, some people call it the meta crisis, some people call it the poly crisis, but I'm trying to contribute some clarity to the cacophony of information that we are dealing with. And that's kind of what I'm immersed in. And I'm so happy to be here to participate today.
Lovely, thank you very much. David, over to you.
Okay, David. I'm David Pinto. I'm author of Fulcrum, and I'm in not Croatia. We were there before. Montenegro. And having a nice time. We're being digital nomads, and we're trying to experiment. We're experimenting with different stories. And so this experiment today, you are the first person. I'm glad it's you, by the way, because you came up with an insight that in response to scale equals squared that I have used, okay, when engaging other people. And I have spoken about you because you are one of the few people that actually got insight, got line of sight. And so I'm very glad that we're starting off with this experiment. Hopefully it's a run of these. To people. I'm very glad it's you. And that's me, I guess. Yeah, are we good for that?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm Julie Jackson. I've been an educationalist and international charity worker all of my life. And this year I have co-created Reflexive Education and Reflex Now on Substack, and recently started a podcast as well as writing many different narratives. And Kevin is kind enough to have joined the many that are part of the Substack of Reflex Now. So welcome to that. So today our focus is the reflexive reading, which is an active and live process which we're recording. And previously I asked Kevin what kind of interest area he would like, and as he's mentioned, the meta crisis. So we have created a story based around that, which will hopefully interest you, but open us up to lots of ideas. And David would explain the kind of activity itself very briefly. Yeah. There's not much to...
We'll intersect it in the actual experiment. So basically, anybody that's watching this, and I would like us to realize that it's an insight into what we're doing, but it's the people that are live that are important. Although the focus is on us, and specifically you, okay, we're all going to be looking at you, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine, I love it.
But don't worry, as far as we know, nobody's going to be looking at it. We're not even, it's only if you're happy at the end of this recording, are you wanting to share it, okay? So we are like,
well, David, it's a pleasure to participate. I have no reservation at all, however this comes out, because that's a part of the learning thing. The whole notion that the value of failure is what you learn in that process, and that's what leads to success. So believe me, however this comes out, I want you to be able to use it to inform the process.
That's right. Okay, so in order to do this reflexive reading, what we're going to simply do is we're going to look at you, okay, reading. Okay, so we're going to share the screen. Or if that's not clear enough for you to be able to read, we'll have to share the document, okay? And then we're going to try and keep sync with where you're reading. Now, if we've got the control of the screen, we can see what you're reading because we're in control of the screen, okay?
Yes.
It's like a teleprompter almost, okay?
Yeah, let's try that. Let's try that method. That's fine. You know,
let's give it a go. And then at some point during it, we'll have little breaks. Okay, and we'll see how it goes. All right, but basically, you're just reading a story, and let's just start with that.
Yes,
Okay.
I love it.
Share the screen.
Reading and interacting, I guess.
We'll see. Have a look and share that screen. Oh, just yeah. Okay. And right.
Wonderful. I see the screen. Okay.
See the screen, but I don't know if we can see you. No. Oh yeah, you have to go to that one. Now, when we look at our screen, but we can't see you very clearly. That's the issue here. So it's a slight technical issue where we cannot see you as clearly as we'd like.
I think that you could. I think there's a way to balance the screen to where if it was important to see me while you're sharing the screen, it could be equal weighted. I think there's a way to do this.
I know we want to.
Oh, here we go. There we go. You're starting to do it.
That's the main screen, but the problem is that we need to see you. Okay.
Oh, I see. So, because on my side, my picture got bigger. See, on my side, yeah, you did start to equal weight it, but I guess it's not. You're not seeing it on your side. Okay.
There's something in display where you can get a different organization of the thing.
Go for it.
No, so how about this? Okay, if that's the case, why don't you put the link to, if you can, put the link to the document in the chat. I will click on it. I have a second screen to my left, your right, and what happens is you could just have my face. All of us could be on the screen. And as I read, I will tell you, okay, I've read the first page, or I've read the first three paragraphs and stuff like that. And you will observe me. If it's important to observe my expressions or what have you, my energy level while I'm reading, then we could do it that way if that helps.
Yep, that's the backup. What I'm hoping to do, what I'm hoping to do is that is pretty good. I just would like to see more of you. Why can't we see him as well? I don't understand why we can't do that. Why can't we see you?
That's so unusual.
Do you know how to magnify us, to look at us?
Okay, how about this? For me to get an idea of what you're seeing, I would have to share my screen to show a document on my side so I can see how your pictures are coming in and see how I can manipulate it to see maybe if I can, offer some advice as to how to do it. If you'd like to try that, or we could go to the backup immediately. Either way, my schedule is open for so it's not like a tight time frame, and I imagine I want to be respectful of your time, but we can fix this however we need to do it.
Definitely need to, but I mean, look, we're going to cut this. This is definitely not something to be watched, so it's definitely got to be cut. But we could try. Yep, I can't think of another thing.
Otherwise, it would be sharing in the Google Doc with Kevin. It's
Yeah,
this Google Doc, and then he's got it. We've got it. We can see his. Like we've done it, we can see where he is. We can see where each of us is. Then we can see.
We're going to try and do this. All right. Sadly, we pinned you. All right, and you pinned you. It's like you're so tiny. Okay. So okay. Shall we just try this for now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's give it a go. So you can see the text quite clearly. Yeah.
Yes, I can see the text clearly. I can see the content up to the phrase, "Are we talking about climate?" in the third paragraph. That's as much as I could see on the screen right now. But I can see everything very clearly.
Okay. So let's try. Let's try. All right. Let's try it this way. And what we're doing is we're looking at Kevin.
Okay.
Okay. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So if you can be as clear as possible when you're looking at this, and we are looking at you while you're reading. So do you want to go ahead and just start reading it? There are 5 sections. We might not be able to get through them all. We might just read the beginnings of some and then jump. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Would just one last question before I start. Would you prefer me to read it aloud?
No.
Okay, got it.
Let's read.
All right, so I'll start reading.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I've read the first 3 paragraphs.
Okay, so I didn't spot anything too much. You were nodding quite a bit. What was
Yes,
you doing while you were nodding?
it's interesting. So, I certainly concur with the idea of we need to transform the medium that we're using to discuss it. And then it's interesting. She leans in, and the participants start throwing out basically their perspectives on the issue, on the meta crisis. And clearly this is the thing, is that so many people are in their own lanes. So there's a way to it's like the starting position. So in the starting position, one person is coming from the IPCC, one person is saying, well, okay, how do we want to define this word? So we're starting to frame how we can get to potentially maybe a medium that we can all agree on that can allow us to communicate. And so I find that an intriguing approach.
What's
I wish
interesting,
I was participating in that discussion.
Wow.
and I find it very interesting that you're nodding because I think you're agreeing as you're
Yes.
compiling your understanding that you just expressed. So you don't know, when everybody reads it, they don't know, and everybody starts compiling, what is this thing? And after you've given a very good summary of, oh, right, I think we cut quite a lot of the next bit because you've got the framing. But let's continue reading, okay?
Sure.
And see what else happens. And of course, the people that are reading as well have got their own ideas.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Nope. What's that? Something happened.
Mhm.
Something happened there.
Mhm.
What happened there? Wait a second. You were reading and everything was smooth, and then something happened.
Oh, the complexity of the discussion required me to slow down, right? Because we are dealing with it, and it's true. Once you bring feedback loops and you bring, technological development, the impact of AI, all these things are making our understanding of how to deal with this, and much more complex. So now we've gone, it's almost exponential. And so now I'm trying to hold in my head, okay, each of the commentators' perspective, their take, what are they trying to contribute, to see. Ultimately, my anticipation is this will, once we put everything on the table, it'll round back to, okay, given we've kind of put our arms in a holistic way around this problem, what's the thread, the medium that could allow a cross-conceptual, cross perspective medium to discuss it, to analyze it, to communicate with each other in a clear way, but it's setting up. So in this particular part, the in complexity has increased,
Which
and
part?
it requires.
Which part exactly? Because I should have interrupted you at the moment. You kind of was going like this, and then you were like, yes, yes. But there was a part that you just went,
Eyes went open.
your eyes opened, and then you looked back
eyebrows.
at a paragraph, and I was
Yeah.
like, what was that bit?
Okay, so we go from the acknowledgement of the initial, as they started, the initial first 3 paragraphs. We're starting to expand this idea. How do you want to define things or whatever? Then we move into this, yes, that's the complexity that we're dealing with. Is there's so many facets to this issue, you know, Raj then mentions that, okay, this is why this paper calls it the poly crisis, because there's all these things converging, and then we get into the specificity of the assumptions of the financial system. So that's one part of the complexity, is the impact on the financial system, and then Devin, brings us into, tech. The term I've heard is technological disruption. He's calling it technological acceleration. It's the same thing. The idea that this technology is ahead of our capacity to manage it from an ethics standpoint, to manage the full unintended consequences, all that stuff. But it's also making the problem more complex, and this is where I slowed down, because now I'm processing in implications of what he's saying, and it's true.
I know we want to move on to the whole thing, but I'm kind of interested. Okay, well, let's just move on, because
then Debs brings up the biodiversity collapse. I mean, these are all the important layers of the breakdown of a variety of systems, of which we have to find a thread to deal with all of them. There's a thread that connects all these things, but first you need to recognize what they are.
Let's go on. Did you get to the end of that paragraph? Or?
Yes, I did.
Right. So
down to disruption of ecosystems. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's intriguing. Okay, I've finished the section. I'm intrigued by the concept that we are past the point where traditional problem solving approaches can work. I believe that I hadn't considered that, but I think that's very possible. Certainly the way we have solved problems in the most recent history, we're beyond that ability. I agree with that. So now the hook is on.
Okay, we're halfway through this thing, so here we go. Right. I'll leave it like that, because actually I should have a display. Should be this display. It just goes on and on.
Wow.
What was that?
Oh, what was the wow bit? Yeah.
The depth of the resonance of what Deb is saying, of what they're discussing now, in terms of, as we get deeper into what the problem is, the story of separation. I agree. It's resonant in terms of the depth of my analysis, my research, what I've been exposed to, that we do have this convergence at the core. If the meta crisis is the core, and the poly crisis is the expression, is all the expressions and stuff like that. At the heart of the meta crisis is what they're talking about. What my research indicates they're talking about now. This idea of how we view us as ourselves as separate from the ecology that sustains us, separate from each other, and that accommodates the choices and the incentives that have produced the poly crisis. And this is where they are right now, which is deeply resonant. I mean, if that was more understood.
That doesn't surprise me, because as you say, you guys had a very nice conversation the first time we met, and then I jumped in, and your response to what I'm doing was just like penetrating. So that's why we want to engage you, okay? Because it's you. Your book or whatever it is that you do is one thing. I think it's you. It's valuable. I think it's how you read, how you listen, how you engage. I think it's remarkable. So let's carry on with this, because I want to get a little bit more of an echo.
Okay.
You.
1 second.
Is that okay, or a bit more?
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay right there.
So, just going to do text a bit. There we go. What was that? What was
And
that?
again, the complexity of rationales continues to deepen as you Raymond Schmachtenberger's game theory analysis, but the idea is what that was the idea that the incentive structures have kind of trapped us into this multi-prisoner's dilemma at every scale. In other words, there's something inherent. Our inherent nature is to cooperate. This is why humanity has survived. But we have set up a system of economics, social development, where we're pitted against each other, where competition is the virtue. The multiple prisoners dilemma. So these things don't encourage cooperation. They actually just they encourage a winner take all, us versus them, the absolute opposite of. So they hit that. But this is where this is.
Well, you are right where it's at, and you can see this, and this is reflecting what you know, and it's you that's valuable as far as I'm concerned. All right, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I think at that point. What point did you get to there, Kevin? Because your face kind of lit up a little bit there.
They make mention. So here they're having this deeply thoughtful discussion, and they've layered the fourth dimension, this notion of time, this notion that we're having this that anyone watching this conversation, it's after the fact, and so anything we say here to some extent has already happened, and well, it's actually already happened, and maybe in some ways they've become artifact. It's just evidence of our understanding at a point in time, right? And what has happened between to the point of the listener now watching it. What have they learned? What additional information do they have? In other words, they have become artifacts. They've contributed, and that's a that's a powerful thought process, because oftentimes we think in we don't consider that complexity, right? And it allows us, for example, to think in a very with certainty. Oh, it's self-evident that this must be the case based on what I know now. When not long after this, we're going to learn something that's going to make what's self-evident not self-evident at all. So the recognition of that, to give that humility, actually builds, in my opinion, a certain authenticity and the kind of intellectual balance that whatever they come out with in this conversation, they have a humility about them to realize that that this is not a final answer. This is just a current answer, and I think that was the power of that statement. So that let's not pat ourselves in the back and think we're figuring this thing out and it's all, now we got it covered, But we could make progress as we get down to the core of this of the mental crisis.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really good insight into it.
You're great. Okay, humility. Bringing humility to this is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so glad you bring that.
Yeah, you could scroll up to that Jules. Yeah.
Who's watching us now?
Yeah. Yes.
This is the end.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's deeply insightful and relevant. And on okay, so to speaking to what they're saying. So what they're saying is in addressing the audience, because successful communication is that is the ideas that the speaker is trying to convey is successfully communicated and understood by the listener. And so who their audience is really important. And that the distinction of whether that audience is human and that they're going to take what they get out of the conversation and share it to other humans, how that will have a ripple effect is fundamentally is distinctively different than if this is fed into a computer learning program and stuff like that, and then that's how it's communicated onward, and yeah, it is, that is incredibly powerful to recognize that. I don't think it's not something you can control, unfortunately, from the perspective of the people having the conversation. I think that the best that they could do is by pointing that out, it now introduces that both to the AI, if in terms of absorbing if this uploaded this story, for example, or to the humans who might, that's a difference. And that we need to be cautious between getting the interpretation from the AI as if that would be the same similar type of thought process, experience set, that humans would understand it. The AI doesn't have points of reference, experience, this and that. It has data, right? And so just as an example of this very story, literally, I have been over the last month been putting Chat GPT to use. Now I have very strict personal rules on what I think, where I think AI can be constructive. I think AI can be constructive in terms of data, and the distribution and reasoning and left brain stuff, logic, that type of thing. But I think right brain creativity, writing, things like that, I'm very uncomfortable with it in that space. I don't, because I think those things are a function of human experience that is part that the data doesn't capture fully, and so that said, in a real world example of what they're speaking to right here, I I engaged I engaged chat GPT on the question of the United States relationship with the Soviet Union during the Cold War and with Russia since the end of the Cold War. And what I learned in the process was that the bulk of the reference information that the AI had, and this is one of the biggest depositories of data on the globe, right, is based on the bulk of literature out there, which is supportive of the prevailing narrative. So
Yes.
what happens if the prevailing narrative is not true?
Yeah.
And so what going through the debate, I was able to demonstrate to Chat GPT that there are alternate narratives based on the historical facts that the AI can verify, right? That would explain the events differently than the narrative. And so how it learned and processed that as it affirmed my facts were actually accurate, right? Was that okay, these are alternatives, but they placed like an equal weighting on them. Like, okay, so from this point of view, you have this, and from the narrative's point of view, prevailing narrative's point of view, you have this, as if those things could be equally true. And then I encourage the AI to say, okay, but based on what is your view based on the weight of the evidence, which of these two are likely to be true? And this is where it finally got to the point where it's saying, yes, the evidence that you have shown from that is well known, right, demonstrates that the prevailing narrative is not accurate. Right. But that was the manner by which it went through. It starts off with the information we give it. The body of knowledge is driven by the prevailing narratives, media, research, the academia frame these issues from a certain perspective, and that's all AI is going to know. They're going to get the bulk of that, and then you're going to have a bunch of alternative points of view. And in the fact that the broad consensus seems to support the prevailing narrative, that's how the AI will.
Sorry, I get what you're saying, okay? Because I like how you talk. I really do, okay? However, I do want to like focus on this thing.
Yes.
The most important aspect of what you said, although what you're saying is true about GPT. I've done it with maths. It presents all the maths, standard maths, and I say, what about this? And then it goes, oh, what about this? And then it starts going, oh, that's quite valid. You go, yeah. And then it basically goes with you on it, right?
Yes.
For how all that happens, the balances, I agree. But it's objective thought. And that's what most of them are talking about. But Jules is saying it's about how we're talking, but more importantly, how we're listening. Okay? How we're listening, and then what action do we do when we're listening? Okay? And that's with you. And you were talking about the audience, all right? Whereas I'm less interested in the audience, and I'm more interested in people like you who are receptive. The way you were reading was very positive. You were nodding. You would hit something, and then you'd nod. You would agree with it. You're willing to go with what you're reading. Okay, you're not afraid. You've got a little boat, and you're happy to go out into the waters. Okay, quite complex waters. You go, oh, okay, oh yeah,
and you're willing to share what you see and what you experience as well.
Oh, you're incredibly eloquent about that, which for me then means you're absolutely right. All right, you are just who you are, where you are in your receptive state. The fact that you have a bonus that you can express it quite very clearly, that's just bonus. But there are more of us that are maybe not as eloquent as you are, okay, on the planet. And yet we're concerned with these things, we're concerned with the medical crisis, whatever. We're like, oh God, it is a disaster. And we don't have to have your scale of explication. Okay, but we can't hear it. Okay, we can hear the music, we can't play it. Okay, and so we need to activate the fact that people can hear. Okay, and we need to interact as listeners. Okay, and empower listening, not talkers, however eloquent you might be. Okay,
right. Agreed. In fact, we've had that. We've had the eloquence, and it hasn't necessarily been resonant or true. How about that? So, right. So you're absolutely right. We're at a point where it needs to relate. It needs to hit,
yes,
at a deeper emotional level.
Absolutely. So,
and because I do think I do think each of us have that instinct, in the same way.
Yeah.
You meet someone, or you're in an elevator and the hair goes up in the back of your neck, something is wrong, or oh, I read this person, we just naturally connect. That can be communicated through story to reach the person. That's how to reach the person, right? So what is that? I think it has to do with aligning with their experience, and when they're reading something and it's just like, yes, I've experienced that. At the based on their life's experience.
yes,
that talking within the context of our shared experience is a powerful relating story, because if they can see themselves in the story, then it's not about trust. It's it's not about trusting something else. It's about, yeah, I'm there. This has been my
being invested in it.
Okay, now this is because of the technical issues, and we have kind of explored some ideas. So we won't be able to get through the rest of these, but can we go through the next one?
Surely, let's do that.
Another maybe 10 minutes. So if we can start,
I will be brief.
well, maybe we'll spot what's going on. Okay, so we're going to change this to this one. Let's go for this.
Yeah, I've completed this.
What was that? What was that?
What the elder said, it's like deep insight. Wisdom doesn't live in recordings. The implications of that statement. In other words, she's speaking to the idea that if you are just present for what is being shared here, and that communication becomes successful, you intake that. That is where the wisdom will live, because you will then take it and go elsewhere and reflect it. It will change you, right? So the potential of the recording is this notion that I don't have to be fully present to absorb it as I'm hearing it and understand it as deeply as I can, because I can still do this. I can listen to it over and over again from the recording. And the problem is it's never the same. And this is what she's speaking to. And again, that's deep resonance to me. Indigenous wisdom. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've completed this section. Mm.
What's the
I just that question at the end of this, I just completed it. Yeah. Is there more beyond that?
Yeah, let's go see if we can. It's quite tricky. See if the thing works. You are writing, reading. I change the text. Is what is called.
Did that point in particular resonate with you, or was there something?
Yeah, well, yes, I'm at the point where we're talking about it, that's tapping right into your experience of how you understand things, how you think, and correlating it to how you read and the limitations of language, of words, so that we can align how we think to understand what we're reading, as opposed to these finite bits of data. Right. So we've detached through how our language works, and this is so important, because it's at a level of process that we don't think of it, and yet that's where the problem exists. So this is to me deeply insightful.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. Oh, I lost them. We have lost you. It was stuck. Oh, wow. Incredible.
Yeah, Kevin's frozen. You might be able to hear us though. Can you hear us?
Well, if he's frozen. You might have heard us, but you can't reply. I hear. Amazing, isn't he?
Yeah. Incredible.
It's just incredible. So it's a pity we didn't get the tech right, because I would have liked to rest this whole thing. But
he says he has time. So
no, he's got some other things to happen afterwards. So okay. All right. Well, it looks like this has died. Kevin gone. So yeah, he's gone. Maybe he's going to try and come back. Amazing, incredibly high quality. Oh,
okay.
Oh.
He's back. You're welcome back.
So this was really, really it's a very important point, that they're making.
Let's do again.
Stop presenting. That makes it easier.
Identify that the way they process in terms of how they understand information, how they think, to connect that process, to align that process with how we comprehend the idea that our language is fixed and static and it comes in, capsules and stuff like that. But the actual process of thoughtful understanding is you're always gathering in new information. You're always adding more to it. It's never done and stuff like that. And so, and that's so important because people feel like them, and I'm guilty of this too. If I talk about climate, catastrophe or whatever, that the data by itself is compelling as a standalone thing, when actually it is how it relates to the person. And if you can't connect it to how it relates, then you're just telling me a story that's supposed to stress me out. You're telling me a story that's going to make me feel a certain way. You're not telling me a story that's compelling me to say, that's connecting this to my children, that's connecting this to how I live my life, that's connecting this to every time I get into my car, to indicate, so that, that's such important communication that the story is getting down to, because this is the heart of the matter. To the extent that we can, that line of approach can be broadly communicated, I think people are fully capable of reconsideration, because that's where the problem is. It's not out here at these higher levels. If that data was compelling, people would already be racing to fix the problem or whatever, and they're not. And so until we can, and I've distilled it down to this concept, and this is what they're getting to in a very careful and thoughtful way in the two stories that I'd read up to that point. Modernity has encouraged us to forget who we are. And a part of understanding who we are is how we think, how we feel, what is our right relation to each other in the ecology that sustains us. If we remembered that we can't do anything without the air we breathe, on and on and on and on, right? Then it would matter to us. That would matter more than GDP. Right. That it would be self-evident, right, that the economy functions as a derivative of the ecology. So therefore, if you have an ecological problem, don't worry about economical costs. I mean, the house is burning, right? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
This is not the time for profits.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And the way you bring things, I have to say, how you describe things to me, I just find very appealing. Very clear. Right. It's now gone on the hour, and I don't know if we can continue with it. And if not, we need to bring it to a closure. Okay.
Indeed, I can provide another half an hour if that works for both of you. I'd love to continue. I find this exercise deeply moving. and resonant, and it yeah, and important. So I want to put this.
Okay, let's do it.